It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of December 6th, 1991. We're only 4 weeks away from getting into a brand new year in 92, so today we got 6 movies to look at. Let's not waste any time, let's just jump on into it. And speaking of 6, our first movie that we have here, the biggest new release of the week, is indeed a 6th film in the series, and that 6th film is, of course, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So after everything that had happened before with Star Trek V, The Final Frontier being both a critical and financial failure, there was a lot of intentions to make this next film a prequel, with younger actors portraying the crew of the Enterprise while attending Starfleet Academy. And of course, J.J. Abrams would do something very similar to that later on down the road with the Kelvin trilogy, the 2009 Star Trek film, which is still, I recently talked about this because the news came out recently that Matt Shankman, who was going to direct Star Trek IV, has now been attached to direct Fantastic Four, so he's dropping out of that movie. And really, all I can think about that is on that similar front, I would say that, honestly, the J.J. Abrams trilogy, I think, should just stay a trilogy, because they've had that fourth film in development since the last movie came out, Star Trek Beyond in 2016. And they keep saying they're going to keep doing it. It's still, as of this recording, still set for next Christmas 2023, but, I mean, honestly, if we don't ever see that movie, I'm not going to be that upset about it. I would say that you should do it, if you're going to do it, have a good script to it, or just stop doing the movies right now and just go on to focusing on the TV series, which the shows on Paramount Plus are actually pretty good right now. Star Trek Discovery, I know a lot of people have mixed opinions about it, but I like that show. Star Trek Picard has been very good. Star Trek Lower Decks has been surprisingly funny. There was Short Treks. There was this new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I've been getting into, which has actually been really good, probably the best of the newer series. I'd say focus on those, and then later on down the line, reboot the movie series with a new cast and crew. I mean, do something different with it, but at this point, if we don't see the people from the J.J. Abrams movie again, I'm not going to mind it too much, because I think they did end it better on the note of Star Trek Beyond than they did with Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness, I think, is the weakest of that three-film series, but we're not talking about those movies yet. We're going back to the original Star Trek team, and of course, this is the last film featuring the entire crew. Everybody in here is of course, the original crew is in here for the last time, and they didn't really technically say that this was indeed the last adventure for the Star Trek team, because they said that for the 5th film as well, and of course, look how well that turned out. But, I mean, when you look at the marketing for this, I think they really did know that this was indeed going to be the last time we were going to see these people together. I mean, the teaser trailer, which is one of the best teaser trailers ever, it's one that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, shows all the clips from both the movies and the TV show in the Starship Enterprise, and it's a great teaser. I mean, such a great trailer, and I mean, just by that alone, I think they really knew that this was indeed going to be the end of the original Star Trek series, and they did want to go on a high note, and you could tell because who'd they get to direct this movie? Nicholas Meyer, who also did Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which at the time was considered the best Star Trek movie ever, and it still is the best Star Trek movie ever. But, yeah, you bring him back in here, and you know that he's going to put his heart and soul into this to make a damn good movie, and, yeah, it's a damn good movie. I'll give it this, it's much darker, it's much more deeper and more dramatic than some of the other movies in the series, and it actually does work because we know that this is going to probably be the last time we see all these people together in one movie, which it ended up becoming, and I like a lot of the ideas, I like a lot of the ways that they bring in contemporary spins on contemporary events of like the Cold War had just ended at that point. And in fact, Leonard Nimoy made the suggestion on the script about what would happen if the wall would come down in space, the Berlin Wall being the wall in this case. But it's a very interesting decision, and it does work very well. Everybody here is committed to this, to giving one last great performance. I mean, William Shatner gives probably his best performance in these movies, in this particular film. I think he does a very good job here. He's very conflicted, of course, because of what happened in The Wrath of Khan. Not The Wrath of Khan. What was the next one after that? Search for Spock, where his son is dead because of the Klingons, and of course, now he has to help the Klingons, and he's conflicted because he knows he has to do his job, but he's also trying to keep this prejudice that he's had against them in check. And when something happens, when they're accused of starting a war with the Klingons, and his prejudice comes back to hurt him, it's very intriguing, and something that really is one of the strongest elements of the movie. The cast does a great job once again coming back together. That charisma is still there, and even for as dark and dramatic as it goes, it never feels forced. It never feels like everybody's just doing this because they're obligated to. They're just doing it because they have good material to work with here, and it does work very well. I love the visuals in this movie too. The sets in this are incredible to look at. I love the way that they also kind of combined sets that were originally used for Next Generation and used them here for the more darker and dramatic situations. There's even a cameo by Michael Dorn's character of Worf, who is in this movie, he's actually is he the grandfather or the great-grandfather? Let me double check. He's, of course, the character of the grandfather of Worf from Star Trek The Next Generation, and I like the way that they brought him into this as well. What's more interesting about this particular film is that, of course, Gene Roddenberry passed away about 6 weeks before the movie was supposed to come out. It was around October of '91. The film had already finished filming by September, and it's a very interesting situation. This is the last movie that Roddenberry had any involvement in. I don't think he had any involvement with the development of the next film, Star Trek Generations, but I'm pretty sure he did have an idea to bring the Next Generation crew into this next set of movies, which, I don't know, would have been interesting to see I think it would have been interesting after the Next Generation crew's film run had ended if we had gotten to see some of the other characters from the other shows, like, I don't know, Voyager or Deep Space Nine down the road, but I don't know. I thought that would have been a more interesting idea, but like I said, we'll get to those ones when we get to those ones. We're just looking at this one here. You could definitely tell that something like Avengers Endgame, which was another film that was pretty much certain that this was going to be the last time all these different people were going to be involved in there, took a lot from Star Trek 6, even the whole thing with the signatures for all the actors at the end, in the end credits. Of course, they did that in Avengers Endgame. Star Trek 6 was a fantastic film. I mean, I would honestly say that of the original series, this is the second best film of the six-film series after, of course, The Wrath of Khan, which is a great movie. Both of these are great movies, I should say, but I don't hate any of the other Star Trek films that came in the six-film series, except, of course, Final Frontier. But other than that, yeah, this one and Wrath of Khan really are the two best ones of the original crew, at least in my opinion. The Star Trek Motion Picture is an interesting movie, but it's filled with a lot of flaws to it. Search for Spock is kind of an underwhelming sequel, but it's not the worst Star Trek movie they could have done. And Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is a fun adventure film that appeals not only to the Star Trek fans, but can also appeal to non-fans. And this movie really is a nice swan song for all these people involved in here. It's a nicely made film, visually stunning to look at, some great music by Cliff Edelman, who, along with the tone of the movie, creates a darker score for the film. The visuals are outstanding, the acting is very good, and it's a nice send-off for these characters. It's a nice send-off for all these characters that we've come to know and love. And of course they would reunite again briefly. It's most of them for the Futurama episode that came about 10 years later, but this is the last time we'd see all of them together in one movie, and it just made it very special, especially considering that this was also the 25th anniversary of Star Trek, and you just had so many of these different things happening, including the death of Roddenberry. And it's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet, sweet song. Toy belt. It's a bittersweet, sweet swan song for this original series, and it does make you kind of interested to see what they would do with the Next Generation crew, which was also kind of a mixed bag. But like I said, we'll get into those once we get into starting with Star Trek Generations in about 3 years. But Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country is a really great Star Trek movie. It's a great film that wraps the original series up very well. Can't recommend it enough. So that was the big new release, but there was also a lot of independent releases. So let's go ahead and dive through most of these real quick because I haven't seen most of them. So these are going to be very short reviews. So let's start with the first movie that we have here, and that is Hector Babenco's At Play in the Fields of the Lord. Sounds like something you would hear from a British person. It's at play in the fields of the Lord. Hector Babenco also is the man who did Kiss of the Spider Woman as well as Ironweed with Jack Nicholson a couple years ago. This was his first movie after that, and it felt like they were trying to make the next big epic movie, but this is based off of a novel from Peter Masterson, which at the time was considered very unfilmable, but you have this producer, Sal Zanitz, who was most known for making legitimately good adaptations of stuff that people thought really couldn't have been adapted very well. And and judging by this, it doesn't look terrible, but at the same time, it does very much feel like one of those Oscar bait type movies, like the movies that they're trying to just win as many Oscars as they can. And it feels very generic. It feels like it is, and it also feels very preachy too, like an environmental film. Which, coincidentally enough, James Cameron actually said that this movie was actually used as a reference for the Avatar franchise, which of course has a lot of similar feelings to it, like a similar style to it. But I mean, Avatar. Here's the thing: Avatar is a little bit better, but then again, I have to say this by saying that I haven't seen Avatar in a long time. I don't think I've seen it since it was in theaters last in 2009. So I can't really say if that's true or not. But hey, the movie's coming back out in theaters again next month, so I'll check it out again to see if it still holds up. But yeah, I can't really say too much about this particular film. Again, I haven't seen it. It doesn't look terrible, but it does look like an Oscar baity movie, in my opinion. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Steven Soderbergh's Kafka. Of course, I'm a big fan of Steven Soderbergh's work. This was his first movie that he did after Sex, Lies, and Videotape kind of jump-started his career. But you could definitely tell this is probably one of those passion projects he was so interested in doing, and then it just doesn't quite end up meeting the expectations that they had for it. Has a nice looking trailer though. It's very interesting and very unique and weird. It actually kind of reminded me a little bit of Brazil and what a movie David Cronenberg would make in the same year, Naked Lunch. It just weird, absurd, bizarre, just crazy looking. So like I said, I haven't seen it, but it does look very interesting. It looks very bizarre. It looks very weird. Plus, Jeremy Irons doesn't usually turn in a really bad performance in a movie, unless it's something that's even a bad movie like Dungeons and Dragons, which he gives this not intentionally. He gives this way too over the top performance as the bad guy in that one. But we'll get to that one eventually. But as far as this movie goes, it looks like it could be very interesting, but if I do see it, I am going to go with it. My expectations are a little lowered considering the critical reception I've seen for this. And just not expecting something as good as something like Sex, Lies, and Videotape. So that's Kafka for you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Convicts. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about Convicts, apparently. Yeah. Couldn't find a trailer. I just found that one, and haven't really seen the movie, but I'll tell you the plot is that a boy works for convicts on the sugarcane plantation of a senile Civil War veteran in 1902 Texas, and it's based on a play by Horton Foote. So yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else to say on it. I mean, I couldn't find any clips without looking at the movie itself, which I didn't have really the time to, but I mean, it's got Robert Duvall and James Earl Jones in it, so it's got to be worth some merits. That's pretty much all I have for you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Let 'Em Happen. So yeah, definitely a lot more interesting than the last movie we looked at. You have an interesting cast here. Christopher Eccleston's in this, who also would later go on to become Doctor Who when they revived the show back in the 2000s. You got Tom Courtenay in here, Michael Gough from the Batman movies, Serena Scott Thomas, Clive Revill, Ian Cumberson, Peter Ayer, Eileen Atkins. The writers of this, Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, would later go on to write most of the modern James Bond movies. And the story is very interesting too. You've got the story. It's the story of Derek Bentley, Eccleston's character, who's convicted of the murder of a police officer by joint enterprise, and was hanged in 1953 under controversial circumstances. So, Yeah, it could be a very interesting movie to look at. The cast has to be interesting. The writer has to be very interested to see how this works out. It could be a pretty good movie. I've seen some good things about it. Might be something I definitely might check out. So that's pretty much all I have for you on Let Him Have It. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and that is December. So as you can see, this takes place in December of 1941, 50 years ago at that point, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. You have 5 teenage boys at a New England prep school. They hear the news of the bombing and realize that their lives are going to change forever. So I guess this is some kind of a coming-of-age movie that takes place in World War II, which is maybe in the right hands. It could be very interesting, but this director, Gabe Torres, I'm not too familiar with his work, so I don't really know how good this movie could be. It's got an interesting cast involved. You got Balthazar Getty, Will Wheaton, Jason London, Brian Krause, Chris Young, Jason London. Oh, I already said Jason London. And, I mean, it could be interesting. It could be a very intriguing film, but I don't know. I haven't heard too much about it. There's not even a page for it on Wikipedia, so it's a it has to be some kind of very forgettable movie, and it doesn't even have good reviews on IMDb or on some of the other websites I'm looking at. 56% on Google users, they like the movie, but it's not really a whole lot, so I'm guessing the movie wasn't really all that good, but you never know. Sometimes people can be wrong on these things, so that's really all I gotta say about it. So that's December for you. So with that said, we're wrapping up another edition of Time About the Movies. Big show coming up for the next week. So we got Steven Spielberg's highly anticipated Peter Pan adaptation Hook with Robin Williams, Julia Roberts, Bob Hoskins, Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook. You've also got Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans in The Last Boy Scout, and you also have Warren Beatty and Annette Bening in Bugsy. So 3 big movies that came out during the holiday season come out this next weekend that we're looking at. So should be a very fun show to look at. So with that said, thank you guys for watching, and as always, if you want to see more videos like this, please check out the next page for the playlist as well as the previous episodes, and I'll see you guys next time for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.